Greetings, amigops and top teners everywhere. This is Mike from Top 10 with Kyle and Mike. This week, as every week, I am joined by our lovely co-host, Kyle. Kyle is bringing the topic this week. I don't know what the hell the topic is, but we will be discussing it, we'll be debating it vigorously, and by the end of this week's episode, hopefully somewhere before like an hour and a half, we'll see, we will have a definitive top 10 on that topic. So Kyle, what are we talking about this week?
So this week we are doing not a spin-off, but a cousin of a podcast we've done before. If you remember, we did one for your birthday. We did the top 10 Mikes or Michaels out there. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about that kind of podcast. I thought, well, we could do that for a different kind of name. What's another common name we could do? And then I remembered there was a topic ready-made for us because currently on the interwebs in the last couple of years, there's been an active engagement discussing the relative rankings of various Chris's.
Yes. The Chris Wars, I believe they're known as.
The Chris Wars is the term that people have given this particular skirmish. So we're going to be taking the Chris Wars and settling them once and for all, and also expanding them to include 10 Chris's.
Okay.
And I think it's important to note that this is Chris Wars 2018, because I think this could change. I think this is a very fluid list, but we're going to be doing it as of right now. We're recording this on December the 11th, 2018. As of right now, this will be the definitive ranking of Chris's.
Okay, so my number one most important question is, it's around Christmas time. Are fictional, or at least purportedly fictional Chris's, like our good friend Kris Kringle, like, is Kris Kringle in the running?
Kris Kringle is not in the running. I have excluded fictional Chris's.
Or purportedly fictional.
Chris's. All of the Chris's on my list are confirmed to exist.
Okay.
In real life.
Alright, so here's my second question, which I think I know the answer to. Chris. We are including variations like Christoph, Cristobal, Cristoforo.
I'm including Christophers. I did not think of Christoph.
Okay.
If we are including Christophs, there's someone that's going to be high on this list.
Okay.
I think we should include Christophs.
Okay.
So let me just change this list up real quick.
Alright, here's my last question. Living.
Yes, they must be living. I have a list of Christophers or Chris's that hopefully shall rest in peace forevermore that will be discussed in our honorable mention section, but do not make our list.
Okay. So, we are doing confirmed, real, alive, close variants on the name Christopher.
Yeah.
So, to also be clear, we would not be including somebody like Cristiano Ronaldo because that's Christian. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, precisely. You will not find Cristiano Ronaldo on this list or in the honorable mentions or in the top three.
Theoretically, Cristiano could be nicknamed Chris. It's a Christopher.
It's too far
We're talking
off.
Yeah. Okay. No, just making sure.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's a good distinction to me. I'm glad we've got some specificity. So, in that note, what am I basing this on? Some things I'm taking into account. Number one, attractiveness. That's a big one.
Number one.
That's number one on my list. Number two, body of work. So I'm taking into account Chris's entire body of work with a lot of weight given to recent work.
Yes.
And just general relevance. So that goes hand in hand with recent work. Like, you could be an all-time great Chris, but what have you done for me lately? We're talking about Chris Wars 2018. Does that make sense? Is that fair, you think?
I think that makes perfect sense. So here's another question. I think, is it safe to say that the way you've thought about this list will skew towards the actual Chris Wars that are raging in the pop culture right now? Like the actor Chris's, would that be a group that gets a lot of weight in this list?
I don't want to spoil too much, but the top of our list is pretty heavily weighted towards the Chris's you hear about a lot.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd love to get into it.
Well, okay, then I'll do number 10. Number 10 is a Chris by the name of Chris Rock. Now, Chris Rock, I think as recently as maybe 2 weeks ago, just dropped his very own Netflix comedy special. Mm-hmm. So he's relevant. He's around. He's doing stuff.
Yep.
He's getting up there a little bit in years. I wouldn't say I'm attracted to him as much as I am to some of the other guys on this list.
Yep.
He's still funny. I haven't watched his Netflix special, but he's still got it. He's coming in at number 10 just because I think he's a little past like the golden age of Chris Rock.
I think that's generally fair. I think it's hard for a guy who came up by being controversial to keep that up for the entirety of a career. Like that's the thing. If controversy and being innovative are your thing, it's hard to create controversy and innovate on what you've already done. So I think from a career standpoint, he's basically, I would say he's the elder statesman of stand-up comedy, right? Like him and Jerry Seinfeld are kind of...
He's one of them, absolutely. And like
him, Dave Chappelle,
I was going to say he and Dave Chappelle are like the cornerstones of not just black comedy, but like two of the greatest stand-up comics active right now, for sure.
Absolutely. So he's, from a career standpoint, he's at the top of the mountain looking down on a great career that he had. I will say though, from a looks point of view, while I think his baseline looks are not as high as perhaps some of the other Chris's we'll be discussing here, he has really embraced the longer hairdo in recent years, and it has done him favors. He's also put on a couple pounds, which I think he needed.
Yeah. It's a good look. It's good look.
Yeah.
I think for me, I just it's a little jarring to see it because he does have it's a different look. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm partial towards his older one is all.
Yeah, it's definitely different. It's interesting to see a guy who at a certain phase of his career looks so different. George Clooney, I think, has undergone a similar transformation where it's not just that he looks like he's developed or gotten older. He actually has a very different look now than he did in his 40s.
You think so?
Yeah, well, because he's got the beard is such a big part of it. His hair is so much longer. And I also think, I don't know if George Clooney's just kind of got a different skin regimen. His skin tone is different. Like he looks like a different guy.
Darker, you mean?
No, I think he looks lighter. George Clooney seems to have I think it's because his stubble isn't as dark. So like when I look at George Clooney now, he used to be tall, dark, and handsome. He's now he's just sophisticated and suave. And I think that Chris Rock has sort of undergone a similar transformation looks wise.
Wow.
So I like to think that this phase of Chris Rock's career his points have sort of shifted. He probably gets fewer comedy points than he would have 10 years ago, but I also think he gets more looks points.
That's fair. I like it. I like you standing for Chris Rock a little bit here.
Yeah.
And it should be said, this is no slight to Chris Rock. This is a very lengthy list of Chris's we have here.
This is a stacked list.
Wait till I get to the honorable mentions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to number 9 for the time being.
Yes.
Number 9 is a Christopher, good old-fashioned Christopher. He is, I think one of the greatest actors active right now. He goes by the name of Christopher Walken. Now, he is a weird-looking motherfucker.
That is true. He gets no looks points.
So it's negative points for Chris Walken.
Yes.
I mean, he's a distinct-looking person, but to say that he's a looker is probably a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
But he's kind of transcended his acting career in a way.
Oh, yes.
In the way that, he just takes any role he has and just turns it into Christopher Walken. Did you see the Jungle Book that came out?
Okay, I was gonna say, so there's probably a world of examples where Christopher Walken was Christopher Walken on screen. No example stands out as blatantly as this one.
Ho, man cub, let me see that fire. I want to walk like you. Ho!
It is ridiculous. Also, that was a terrific Kyle as Kevin Spacey as Christopher Walken voice there. That is one of the weirdest ones. So, one of the joys of that movie for me was that I don't think I knew the casting. I want to say I knew Ben Kingsley was Bagheera, and I think that was it. And
really?
so
you probably knew that Bill Murray was Baloo.
I probably did, but I'm not certain
Yeah.
that I did.
Right.
I know for sure that I did not expect Christopher Walken's voice to come out of
But
King Louis.
as soon as it did, you were like, oh shit, Chris Walken's in this movie.
It was no question. And
Right.
I also had no question as to whether King Louis would adopt the personality of Christopher Walken. I felt very certain of that.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's become an entity unto himself,
Yeah.
which I really, really enjoy. And I just like watching movies that he's in.
Yeah.
So that's I never get enough of him in Catch Me If You Can. Where you going tonight, Frank? Is it somewhere exotic? That might be some of his finest work.
It is. So here's the only thing I have to say on Christopher Walken. Now, we are, as Dumbledore would say, we're leaving the world of fact and whatever the quote is, we're sort of entering this world of speculation. It is worth noting on his negative column, he has long been suspected of murdering Natalie Wood.
Oh yes.
Which had long been strongly and widely suspected of being involved in the death of Natalie Wood, shall we say.
Yeah.
That has to play some role in his ranking.
That's a good point.
I will say though, the idea of somebody like Christopher Walken, first of all, surviving that incident, like, and being a Hollywood entity intact is remarkable. But the idea of somebody as odd and as unique as him having a viable Hollywood career for like 35, 40 years is so astounding. It makes no sense.
It would be like if Steve Buscemi killed a guy and was still doing things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if Steve Buscemi were continuing to be Steve Buscemi or becoming more Steve Buscemi over time and it's 2050 and we're still talking about Steve Buscemi.
Which I suspect we might be.
We might be. But interestingly, Steve Buscemi has tried to transition to be a less Buscemi-y Buscemi.
Which is too
whereas
bad.
Walken has only grown into his Walkenness as time has gone on.
Chris, do you want to do a movie? Only if I can just be me. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. That brings us to Ocho, numero ocho.
Mm-hmm.
This is our first athlete on the list. Number 8 is point guard for the Houston Rockets, Chris Paul.
A criminally underrated basketball player.
I think it is truly criminal. I don't know, among point guards that we've watched growing up, he's probably definitely top 5, right?
Well, the interesting thing about him is he's the only legitimate all-around point guard that I think we've seen in our time, because we've had a couple of the only assist guys. So we had Jason Kidd was an literally only assist guy. Rajon Rondo was a only assist stat stuffing asshole, but also in the mold of only assists.
Yeah.
And has been described by many people as the most selfish assist maker of all time. And then we have some of these other
Scoring
new era
point guards.
Yeah, the scoring point guards. I mean, Russell Westbrook, is he a point? I guess he's not. James Harden, let's take as an example. James Harden is not a point guard. Sure, he theoretically played point for a while. I think Westbrook does or did for a while, but those guys are combo guards. They play the 1 and the 2. Chris Paul is a very good old-fashioned, like John Stockton. He's a damn point guard, and he's been great for a long time.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. I love watching him play because he's so short.
Yeah,
he's just like he's done the State Farm commercials. He had those cool commercials where he had like the twin brother with the mustache.
I forgot about those. Those are great.
Aren't they good? And he hangs out with Oscar from The Office in those commercials.
I forgot all about this.
He's like one of the more like visible NBA stars that isn't like LeBron or Kobe or I guess even Harden. But like I think most people would, even if they couldn't say who he was, would recognize Chris Paul as a basketball player, which is more than you can say about a lot of guys in the NBA.
Especially of that sort of second tier, like you said.
Yeah.
The NBA is such a superstar-driven league that James Harden is the beard. LeBron is LeBron. And there's a couple other guys, and then it's, Steph Curry is kind of his own beast.
KD.
But yeah, of that second group of people, there's not a lot of them that have the same kind of recognition that Chris Paul has. And I think the State Farm bit, now that you say it, is probably a big part of it.
It helps a lot, and it's just cool that he plays, like, he was like the piece that the Rockets needed last year. And I think with Chris Paul playing in the last 2 games of that series, I think they offed the Warriors. Because it was really Chris Paul, like, they burned him out the first 5 games of that series, and that's what did him in. It's just fun to watch his career, because he was fun on the Clippers, and he's been fun here. So, big fan of Chris Paul.
That's a great pick. I like the Chris Paul pick. I want to give one little shout to the looks department. Chris Paul has got a great thing going for him, which is that he is equally as handsome as he is cute.
Yeah.
He works as the handsome romantic lead, and he also works as like the cute best friend.
He's very rom-com. Charming.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm into Chris Paul.
Yeah. I'm all in on this. I like this pick.
Good. That brings us past number 8, which means that it is time for the not top 3.
Pew, 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 pew.
Cue music.
Play music now. Insert tape. Flip over.
Okay. Music is now played. Mike,
thank you for playing music.
Mike, we didn't just hear music, but you have to trust me. The music did play. The listener will hear the music in between.
I gotta tell you, I would never make it in the mocap or green screen world. Like, it just
even if I held like a tennis ball on a stick in front of you, it wouldn't.
Yeah, like telling me that's Dobby wouldn't work for me.
It is kind of impressive, some of these actors, how they're able to do that. Anyways, we're in the not top 3.
Mm-hmm.
First on the not top 3, I don't want to go into this too far, but the first on the not top 3 is Chris Brown. You can't be hitting people.
No. Somebody brought up Chris Brown recently, and it was gross. Chris Brown is an immensely talented person. Immensely talented.
No question.
Yeah, not a good person. And the difference between him and Christopher Walken here that I think we ought to draw, because it would be natural to draw parallels here. We know Chris Brown did this. There's no question. The Christopher Walken thing it's a mystery. Chris Brown is a bad person for sure.
So that's that. Number 2 on our not top 3. Chris Davis. Chris.
Yeah, which one? Yeah, okay.
Chris Davis, for those of you who don't follow Baltimore Orioles baseball, which is almost everybody.
Yes.
Was it like 2014 or 15? He hit almost 60 home runs in a year.
Yeah, what did he finish? 56?
57 or 8. It was like, he was really close. All while hitting like 320 or something. It was like, he got tons of MVP votes. He was incredible. And then he signed this like ridiculously lengthy contract. And this year, he was proven with statistics the worst player in professional baseball. He hit like 130 with an on-base percentage of like 130 and a slugging percentage of about 130. I think at this point, the worst contract in baseball. Like, I'd rather have Miguel Cabrera's contract, because even though he's not going to play half the time, when he does play, he's at least going to hit 250 and be on base 3 out of 10 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And the teammates like look to him as a leader and an elder statesman. He provides some sort of value. I want to take one quick step back on Chris Davis just to talk about his career more broadly. So, step in and correct me if I'm wrong here. So Chris Davis is a big time prospect with the Rangers in like 2007.
Right.
He's like 20 years old, and he's knocking at the door of the big leagues. People are saying this guy is the next big thing, right? He comes up, sucks.
Yeah.
He's like bad.
Is ass. Yeah.
Yeah, he is ass. Basically disappears for, he has like he plays in the big leagues for a little bit.
Yeah.
But then kind of disappears, right?
Mm-hmm.
Reemerges with the Orioles, and once again we will leave these firm ground of fact and enter the world of speculation. So he disappears, reemerges like 6 years later with the Orioles as a Greek god and suddenly can hit a baseball, does what you've just described with all of these home runs, and then suddenly can't hit a baseball anymore. And
Weird.
I think it's safe to say at this point will never more hit the way he once did.
No. So
is that a fair?
That's a pretty good summary of Chris Davis's career for the lay person.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have another really good not top 3 Chris, so I'm gonna just pick on somebody. We like to tease him a little bit occasionally on this podcast before for being a little derivative in his writing style. The last one on here is Christopher Paolini.
I was gonna say, this one Christopher Paolini.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I feel bad for putting him on this not top 3, but he was the best I had.
Well, he's a little Chris Davis-esque. A lot of early promise, and what have you done for me lately? And now that we say it, I'm pretty curious, like, what has he actually done for us lately?
I didn't look.
Does he write still? Like, is he gonna write something?
Maybe he's like a screenwriter now.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I'm sure he's getting that Aragon money just fine.
Oh, wow, he's bald. Oh, that's weird. He's bald and has a beard.
That's too bad.
All right, I'm done with that. It's depressing me.
All right, so I don't feel as bad anymore for putting him on the not top 3. Do you have any more, or should we keep on going?
Well, let's keep going. I really like the mix on that not top 3.
Yeah, it's kind of a hodgepodge of bad Chris's.
Yeah, there were a lot of different reasons for being bad.
Yeah, that brings us back to our original list. We're at number 7 now. Number 7, it pains me to put him this low. I'm sure you're going to protest strongly. Number 7 is our good friend Christopher Nolan.
Interesting.
Yeah. In retrospect, I don't know why I thought I could get away with putting him this low. Chris Nolan is arguably, a lot of people would snootily disagree with us, but like you could make the case that he's the greatest like active filmmaker right now, right?
I think, like you said, there's the snooty class. I think I would say Alfonso Cuarón has had the most. He is probably the person who checks the most boxes with the most people.
Yeah,
because he's done everything from critically acclaimed artsy stuff to big budget stuff. So I would say Alfonso Cuarón is probably the person you'd get the most agreement with across the spectrum.
Or do you throw Inarritu in that conversation, maybe?
You see, maybe, but he's had too many movies that suck.
Yeah, but you go back to back with Best Director, that's tough.
Yeah. But I think, like, those are a couple people, like, Guillermo del Toro might get a couple votes, but then, okay, so these are the group of people who you'd get, like, wide buy-in from more than just the Academy Awards goobers and more than just the Avengers goobers. Because you get the Avengers people will tell you a bunch of, big picture people, and then the Academy people will tell you,
And to be, I don't think we're seriously considering like Spielberg and Scorsese in these conversations because they just like do a movie when they feel like it. And
they're not of this era. They're of a different time. I think like the Coen brothers would be on this list. They're sort of their own beast. Like they're a little bit different.
Also, they don't give a shit.
Yeah. So this is a small list of people who actually generate critical acclaim and box office revenue. And in any conversation about this, Christopher Nolan is on that list and somewhere around the top 5.
And on a personal note,
yeah,
probably both of our favorite filmmakers. Like, there are no movies he's made that I don't absolutely love. I can't think
even when they piss you off.
Right.
I would like to rewrite the third act of Interstellar, but even with that movie works so well.
Yeah.
I do think Christopher Nolan is one of those people who I will not be shocked if in 30 years we find out that his brother Jonah was actually the genius. Like, you know how people found that out about, was it Lawrence Kasdan? Is he the guy who wrote Star Wars movies? And all of a sudden everybody realized that he was actually the genius behind all of that. Like, if it turns out that it's not Chris Nolan, I actually would be kind of not totally surprised if like his wife Emma Thomas was the genius or something.
Yeah.
But for right now, going on all the intel we can, this is the guy who is driving this incredible run of success. Because for all of the complaints people give his movies for weird continuity lapses and whatever else people might get on him for, his filmography is, and please, it's following Memento, Insomnia, Batman Begins, The Prestige, The Dark Knight, Inception,
Dark Knight Rises,
Interstellar, Dunkirk.
It's a pretty good list there.
Like, that's nuts.
Yeah. No, he's a legend. He's a Hall of Famer.
He also, I think the thing that I love most about Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker is that he tries to do something different than other filmmakers have done in every one of his films, and he tries to do something different from what he has done in every one of his films.
Yeah.
That's what I really like about him.
Yeah, his movies all feel very different. Even in the Batman series.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's great. We might have to revisit where he is here.
But I like him on this list. I like him probably a little bit higher, but I like him on this list. He definitely doesn't get points in the looks department. He's not a handsome man.
No. This next guy is also not really a handsome man. In fact, he kind of looks like an alien. Number 6 is your hero, your Boston Red Sox, Chris Sale. He's high on this list because before he got hurt this year, he was unquestionably, you could question it, he was with little question the greatest, the best pitcher in baseball. And I think it was like by a pretty sizable margin if you ask me. And he's just come off winning his first World Series ring. This guy is smoking hot right now. And he's an absolute delight to watch.
Yeah, he is an absolute delight to watch. I think for the baseball fans and non-baseball fans alike out there, it's important to just put yourself in the position of a hitter. So you're 60 feet 6 inches from a pitcher, and that's from the rubber. So that you're theoretically 60 feet 6 inches from the pitcher.
But you're not.
You're not really, because the pitcher is stepping in front of the rubber and because their release point is not at the rubber. So any amount of distance that can be decreased by the pitcher is huge in the amount of time you have to react as a hitter. So if the pitcher has a long stride, less time to react. If the pitcher has a long arm, less time to react. If the pitcher has a late release, less time for you to react as a hitter. If the pitcher can do anything to hide what the pitch is before they release, less time for you to process whatever that pitch is. Like there's a lot of...
If the pitcher can throw all of his pitches in the same exact arm slot, so in other words, it looks like he's doing the same arm motion every single time.
So you can't guess early.
Then so now if you have a pitcher that does all of those things and delivers in an extremely unconventional herky-jerky kind of motion, and like throws kind of sidearm so that the ball looks like it's coming from like behind you if you're a lefty,
and throws all of those pitches really hard and incredibly effectively,
you're in deep shit if all those things are true. And all those things are true with Chris Sale. Like, the dude is like he's especially fun to watch because every time he throws, you're like, that guy's gonna fall apart like a fucking Tinker Toy set.
Well, you've been saying that for years. Like, you very correctly and very fairly told me before the Sox got him, like, dude, enjoy it while he's on the mound. He's never gonna last. Because you watch him and it doesn't make sense.
I was saying that when he was a rookie closing for the White Sox and he was shutting down the Tigers like 10 times a year. And I was like, this is really fun for the White Sox, but like this guy is not going to have a major league career. His arm is going to detach from his body. And he's proven me wrong for like 10 years now. So I don't know. Yeah, but I think he deserves to be on this list just because of where he is in the sport right now and the fact that he's coming off of his first World Series win in a pretty prolific career already. A Hall of Fame trajectory career.
Agreed. I also think the last thing I'd want to say for him, having now had the pleasure of watching him as a fan for a year or 2 years now, is that he is psychotic.
Oh, he's a lunatic.
He's an absolute lunatic. But he's a lunatic who holds himself accountable to the nth degree at all times.
That's so important for you Boston fans.
Yeah, it's been really frustrating it was frustrating the past few years to have our pitching staff populated by
Josh Beckett.
Just bums like Josh Beckett, Clay Buchholz, David Price. These guys who would go out there and tell you what a great game they had when they gave up 7 runs. And all of these guys being either coached on the pitching staff or actually having as their manager John Farrell, who once said of a David Price performance in which he gave up, I believe, 6 earned runs, that he had great shape to his secondary pitches.
All right.
It was a real joy to have Chris Sale in town.
It's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
He was number 6.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5. In retrospect, this feels like a little bit of a homer pick for me, but I put him high because he's the only musician that's going to appear on this list. You're giggling because you know it's about to happen. Number 5 is my homeboy Chris Martin. If you don't know him by name, Chris Martin is the lead singer and frontman for the band Coldplay, which you may have heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I realize there's some bias in this because Coldplay is probably my second favorite band, and I've seen them twice, and I just love everything that they produce. But Chris Martin is on a short list, I think, of like calling Coldplay rock is kind of disingenuous. Chris Martin is one of a handful of like notable rock band frontmen that people actually know who he is.
Probably one of like, I actually, it might be one of one right now. Like,
well, you know, Dave Grohl.
I know Dave Grohl because of you mainly. Like, people know Dave Grohl, but everybody
Brandon
knows
Flowers.
Chris Martin. Everybody, I don't know, man. I think stick to your original thought. Like Chris Martin.
My point is it's a short list, and people know who Chris Martin is. The dude played the Super Bowl. Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, whatever it was.
So like, even if you don't want to call like Coldplay a rock band, call them a pop band. Like they're a conventional band, and then you can put him in the same conversation as like an Adam Levine. But like, people know who he is, and his name is Chris, and he's been making great music for a long time, a really long time. And just as you were saying that Chris Nolan is always trying something different, what I love so much about Coldplay is that all their albums are distinctly Coldplay albums. You could never mistake their music for someone else's. And yet,
I want you to finish your thought, and then I want to ask you a question.
Are we talking about the Joe Satriani thing with Viva La Vida?
No.
Oh, they didn't steal that. But the point is that if you listen to Coldplay even moderately, you can very easily tell their albums apart just by listening to it, which is really cool. They've got a distinct sound for all of their albums. That's why Chris Martin is this high. And I just fell in love with him when he did Carpool Karaoke. He was very, very funny.
Well, all right. So I'll give you you've done an admirable job of giving us the Chris Martin as rock star pitch, which I think is the main pitch. I want to add one other thing in the pro column, which is that he is no longer associated with Gwyneth Paltrow, which is a huge plus because Gwyneth Paltrow is, and this is very much the Mona Lisa Saperstein voice, the worst. She is the worst. And I'm very glad that he's no longer associated with her. So that's another plus for him. Here's my question. I'm not in the Coldplay haters camp, but I am I don't totally get why we don't just look at them as a U2 ripoff. So I need you to tell me why Coldplay is not a U2 ripoff. And feel free to tell me that I'm just the unwashed who's only listened to the hits, and that's my problem. Because if that's my problem, that's my problem.
I listen to a lot of U2 because they're very similar bands. Mm-hmm. But I think Coldplay has actually done a much better job of what I just said. Because like, and to be fair, I don't know U2 as much as I know Coldplay.
Yep.
But U2 has remained relatively stagnant. Not stagnant, but like, they've kept the same sound for how long have they been making music? Like,
yeah.
Like when they were younger, like their first albums like sound a little, his voice has changed over time, but I really think that Coldplay has done much more innovation than U2 has, because Coldplay's first album is an acoustic guitar and a set of drums. Their second one, they start layering in like a lot of piano and synth stuff. This most recent album is it's barely recognizable except for Chris Martin's voice. Like that's the constant. And like Viva La Vida, that album is like a ridiculous number of percussion instruments. And then right after he broke up with Gwyneth Paltrow, that whole album is like super synth heavy and like very mellow. Like it's everything they do is super different. And I just don't think you could make that kind of case for U2. Granted, they've got pretty similar sounds, and it's funny, you should listen to Chris Martin try to sing U2 songs, it doesn't work. You can't really replicate what Bono does. And it's kind of funny because you would expect that to be okay, but Bono had to duck out of a U2 show one night, and Chris Martin happened to be there and stood in for him. And I had watched the concert, and it was not very good, which is kind of funny. So I think they're similar bands, but very different at the same time. This is again coming from a serious Coldplay stan.
Well, I really liked that tactic you've employed there, which was instead of really arguing to me why Coldplay is not a U2 ripoff, you actually turned that argument around and put me on my heels so that I have to defend U2. That was very well done, my friend.
Well, like I said, I really like Coldplay.
Yeah.
So I put Chris Martin at 5, and I think he's kind of hot in an artist kind of way.
Excuse me, a specific kind of way. I like the gap in his teeth, actually. Yeah. I think it's very charming.
I like that a lot. All right, now we're getting into like what people think of when they think of the Chris Wars. Right now, I have Captain America, Chris Evans at number 4.
I think that is appropriate for several reasons. I would say the big ones are that I think he's very overrated from a looks standpoint.
Oof.
Just broadly speaking, I think he's too plain. He's very plain looking. He embodies to me very much the Jennifer Aniston ideal, which I know is one of yours, which is that he is a very high expression of the boy next door look. But to me, he's just not that interesting to look at.
Yeah.
Whereas your Jason Momoas, for example, Jason Momoa to me, he's so interesting to look at that I naturally find him more attractive than a Chris Evans, in the same way that I find a Sofia Vergara more attractive than a Jennifer Aniston. So that's one reason that I think Chris Evans should rank low on the like true Chris Wars heart of this thing. The other is he's coming off what is unquestionably his weakest performance as an Avenger.
Yeah, well, I think to be fair, in Infinity War is the hottest he's been because I really like the beard.
Yes, that because it brought him out of the kind of boring boy next door look.
That's fair. I think even without the beard, he's smoke show. But I really love the beard. I shed a tear, as did he, in the Endgame trailer when it was clear that he had shaven. Mm-hmm. But the reason he's this low is because his turn, like you said it, his turn as Captain America in Infinity War was blasé at best. Yeah. And also just like his general body of work doesn't quite stack up to some of the Chris's on this list. Like he has bit roles in a really great movie called Sunshine, another really good one called Snowpiercer.
Yep.
He
plays a superhero named Fire Guy.
Something like that.
Something like Fire Guy.
He was in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
He was really good in that.
Yeah, he was, that's one of my favorite things he's ever done. But Ali just wanted me to point out that there's a Netflix movie that he like wrote and directed that is like, by her words, a pretty cheesy or a really bad, like good rom-com. You know what I mean? Like,
wow, I kind of like that though. I like the idea of him writing that.
It kind of reminds me of how Zach Braff, when he was done with Scrubs, just like did that kind of thing and like Broadway stuff, like kind of went out of his wheelhouse a little bit. It's cool. I'm just saying, like, if you look at his resume, it's not as varied as some of the other dudes on this list, and it's not as recently skewed as some of these other guys.
I'm curious what slightly older, no tights, less good looking Chris Evans, what that career looks like.
I am too, especially because he's made it so painfully clear that he's ready for that and he's tired of being Captain America. Yeah. Like if you're gonna say like, ugh, I'm tired of this shit, like you better have something good coming. And I believe he probably can.
Well, that's the thing. Like a Steve Carell is a good example. I think I've heard different people have different opinions on how effectively he's made this transition. My dad is a major non-Office Steve Carell hater, but I know, which is just a terrible take.
How dare he?
I know, but there's nobody out there who can credibly say Steve Carell hasn't brought it in the next phase. He was clearly ready to be done with Michael Scott. He made it known. He got out of there, and he didn't just go do Michael Scott again and again. So for Chris Evans, where he's clearly ready to do that next thing, let's see what you got. Let's bring it. Let's do something different.
I can't wait, and I have all the confidence in the world in him.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's time to really zing through some honorable mentions, because I have quite a few here.
Yep.
And I've broken them into groups. First group, athletes.
Okay.
He's no longer active. Chris Anderson, the Birdman. You might remember him playing for the Nuggets. Yeah.
Yes. He was a K, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Chris Chelios, famous former Chicago Blackhawk, Detroit Red Wing, now owns a chain of chili restaurants called Cheli's Chili Bar.
Oh, of course he does.
Number 3, Chris Bosh. You might remember him from the Big Three in Miami, and he played for the Raptors for a long time. He's actually a really interesting guy. I've listened to a couple podcasts with him, and he's cool. I like that he's the one that stayed in Miami after all that was over. I was like, hey, I like it here.
I also really like that he both looks like Sideshow Bob.
Yes.
And looks like an actual dinosaur, which is that's like the best one is that he played for the Raptors and actually looks like a dinosaur.
That's why Andrew McCutchen is so likable, because he looked like a pirate when he played for the Pirates.
I gotta say, you've been very loyal to that take, and you're so right.
That's one of the best takes I've ever had. I have to stick to it.
It's like maybe your best take is that Andrew McCutchen just actually looks like a pirate.
Well, he did before he cut his hair.
Well, yes. Yeah.
All right, actors. Chris Lloyd, a.k.a. Doc Brown from Back to the Future.
Yep.
Chris Tucker, a.k.a. You know how to use one of these?
Yep.
Chris O'Donnell, a.k.a. Robin and Batman and Robin.
Oh my god. Holy Rusted Metal Batman.
Holy Triple Saw Cow. Also, inexplicably, Robin in Batman Forever. They just recycled him.
Utterly inexplicable. Though you're getting it backwards. It's the other way around, but it's inexplicable regardless.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But
sure.
Still inexplicable.
No, still ridiculous. Chris Columbus, not that Chris Columbus.
The Harry Potter Chris Columbus.
Harry Potter and Home Alone Chris Columbus.
Good, a very good Chris.
Very good Chris. And of course, oh wait, he's not an actor. I guess I put him under actors because he's a TV personality. Chris Collinsworth.
My mom thinks he's sexy, which is very funny. Met him in person on campus of the school we went to. Super nice.
He seems like a really nice guy, and he seems like he's having fun.
He's also actually, and this is something people have conflicted opinions on. I think he's an outstanding analyst. I really like him as an analyst.
I don't know about that, because I don't know anything about football, but I like listening to him. That's enough for me.
At the very least, you can tell that he has a sense for when to talk, when not to. Like, I think even if you don't know exactly what he should be saying, having a good broadcast sense would come through to you.
Yes, agreed. A couple of fictional Chris's that wouldn't have counted anyways, but I just wanted to rattle them off. Christopher Robin.
I was hoping he'd make an appearance, even though he's not allowed.
Did you see Christopher Robin?
No.
We'll be discussing it in the 2018 Topskers, assuming it doesn't get nominated for one, because it may. It was a delight for someone who is our age and not for kids. One of the greatest Chris's of all time, I wish we were including him actually on the list, Chris Traeger.
Chris Traeger.
And probably my favorite, even more than Chris Traeger, is Chris Turk from Scrubs.
Yeah. I don't know. I ride for Chris Traeger. Like, I'm an Ann Perkins guy, ultimately, but I do love Turk.
I'm a Scrubs stan, and so I have to stand for Turk. But how many times can I say stan in this podcast? Let's find out.
I don't know.
All right, and then some deceased Chris's that I wanted to throw up there. Chris Farley.
Yes, incredible. Fat guy in a little coat.
Yep. Chris Cornell.
That still makes me sad.
I really miss him. Christopher Lee.
Did you say Lee?
Yeah.
Christopher Lee?
One of the all-time greats.
Yes. As a musician or as an actor.
Pick one. And Christopher Reeve, of course.
Yeah. Christopher Reeve. These are sad. You're kind of making me sad now. I'm remembering all these great Chris's who died.
Let's get back into the top three, because the top three are great, and we gotta move. So, Number 3 of our 2018 Chris Wars is Mr. Chris Pratt.
Okay. I'm really glad, because this to me means that you got the top 2 right.
Yeah. The thing about Chris Pratt, he's stupid funny. He's stupid funny. But as we saw in Avengers Infinity War, he's not the hottest Chris out there. And
No.
And I think it's just a sour taste in my mouth. I just didn't really like him in Jurassic World. I thought he was one of the better parts of that movie, and I still didn't really like it. And
wait, is Jurassic World the one that I just saw?
yeah. Well,
Okay,
sorry,
well-
Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom.
Oh yeah, or as my good friend Nate has referred to it, Jurassic Fart, Fallen Scrotum.
That's
still
apt.
don't know why that ever made sense in his demented mind, but I love it.
I think it's applicable to that movie.
Yeah. But he said it before he saw that movie is the most important thing. It
he
sounded
knew.
melodious to him.
I think the thing with Chris Pratt is he's definitely a top 3 Chris right now because he's
Yeah.
an undisputed movie star. Like he's a
Yeah.
movie star. The fact that he's headlining Avengers movies and Jurassic Park movies is a testament to his ridiculous earning power. He just got done with not just got done, but had a Hall of Fame run on Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
He's one of the best Chris's around right now. And he just loses points for not being as hot as some of the other Chris's on this list, really, is what it comes down to. I don't know.
I think he also, he's on a little bit of for him, a relative cold streak. The Star-Lord storyline in Avengers was horrific.
Tough.
Not his fault, but it was terrible. What is it, Dos Equis or whatever commercials he's doing are kind of like, whatever.
Oh, wait, wasn't he in a Michelob commercial in the Super Bowl that was really funny?
That actually was pretty good, but the campaign has continued.
Yeah.
He's on some, and it's like, okay, whatever. So he's, for him, kind of on a cold streak. He's lost the glow of being married to one of Hollywood's most likable people in Anna Faris. Like he is for him on a relative downturn, but he was extraordinary, like absolutely extraordinary on Parks and Rec. He can rap every single word to Forgot About Dre. He was sneakily fantastic as Scott Hatterberg in Moneyball. Like, really vulnerable and really good. For me, the question that I pose for Chris Evans is even more interesting for Chris Pratt of what this looks like for him next. Is he just going to do Jurassic Fart 17 through 100? He could. But I think he is a really pretty singularly talented guy, and I would love to see what he can do as best friend number 2, sensitive love interest, guy with drug problem. Like, there are some roles out there that I actually think he could really sink his teeth into and be really good at.
I can't wait until he is the dad on a TV show someday.
Yeah, but like life lesson imparting dad, not
Like-
just goofy dad.
Like
'Cause
Bob
we
Saget
know
dad, not like...
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we know he can be goofy dad.
Right.
But I'd love to see him as life lesson imparting.
I think he could do both, and that's what's so cool about him. But
Yeah.
anyways, that's number 2. Or that was number 3. Number 2 is Mr. Chris Pine.
This is the craziest thing that I've ever felt, because wind the clocks back 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even want Chris Pine on any list that appeared anywhere, and I'm now stunned he's not number 1.
Listen, Chris Pine, people, let's just recap some of the shit he's done lately.
Yeah.
He headlined a Star Trek franchise that has been heralded as really good.
And should have been terrible. There's nothing that makes any sense about those being good or enjoyable or anything positive.
And yet, there were all those things.
Mm-hmm.
He was first of all, he was Steve Trevor and was incredible opposite Gal Gadot and Wonder Woman.
That movie doesn't work if their Band of Misfits doesn't work. It especially doesn't work. So he's the linchpin of the Band of Misfits. Like, they don't make sense logistically or emotionally without him, because you need him to explain why all of the characters are the way that they are to Gal Gadot. He also just needs to bring them together. But that whole movie doesn't make sense if we as viewers don't legitimately believe in the importance of what Diana is saying, or like if we don't give proper credence to her way of looking at the world and we just laugh at it, then this is just a fish out of water comedy and it's not very useful. But he plays the character so well that we as viewers actually kind of take time to listen to what she has to say, while at the same time ultimately seeing the foolishness of some of her beliefs. And he does that. Not as much as she does, but he does it almost as much as she does.
No, it's a perfect balancing act. And to quote him in the movie, he's above average.
Which is the funniest meta commentary / in-movie joke. Like, that was incredible.
Very good. And then to round out his recent resume, and this is the one that really sold me on him.
Yeah. Hell or High Water.
Don't want to talk about it. This is one of those movies like 3:10 to Yuma you just need to go see.
Yeah.
And it completely sold me on Chris Pine as an actor.
I was so shocked
Yeah.
that was him. Every part of that I was like, wait, is that Captain Kirk?
So good. And then he was recently in that, he's been in a Netflix movie that just came out. So he's active. He's on a heater. He's super hot.
Yeah.
He just happens to be a little less hot and on a little bit less of a heater than Chris Hemsworth is the only problem.
Yeah. So give us some Chris Hemsworth.
Hemsworth is, I think you could make the case, the sexiest man alive. He is
short hair Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah.
Bearded, let me be most specific. Bearded, dark, short-haired Chris Hemsworth is as good looking as human beings can be.
Yeah. And the thing about him is that even if he doesn't want to play his full advantage, like long-haired Thor Hemsworth is way, way up there. And I don't think
he's pouring hot. He looks like he should be in cheesy 80s pornography.
Right. He's like a characterized ideal of a sex god, right? And I don't think that Chris Pine could do long hair like Hemsworth does. He obviously
definitely not.
He obviously can do like the beard and short hair. But Hemsworth, and then Hemsworth is just like, he's on top of the world right now. He's Thor and Ragnarok. He was a huge part of Infinity War. He's obviously going to be a big part of Endgame. And I just saw the first sneak peek of they're rebooting the Men in Black franchise, and it's him and Tessa Thompson. Like, he was like the best part of that Ghostbusters reboot a few years ago. He's really, really funny. The only thing that's missing from Hemsworth, and the only reason I considered putting him below Pine, is that I've yet to see Hemsworth really sell me on his like serious dramatic acting chops, but I have all the confidence in the world that he can do it, and that's why I have him at number 1 right now.
But importantly, I think your take is all right. The only thing is, if he is not a strong, serious, dramatic actor, I'm okay with that. Because he has shown extreme flexibility in what he does in the less serious realms, that if that's where he lives and that's his zone, I'm okay with that.
No,
I would like it to see him do something a little bit different. And I like to think that would raise his ceiling on this list or any list. But I'm okay if he's really sexy / badass and really funny. Like, he's got those things down.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
He does that as well as literally anybody, and I think he's still number 1. I just, like, that's the one thing that Pine has over him right now. But on the flip side, Pine isn't nearly as funny as Hemsworth is. Yeah. So, or at least we haven't seen that. So that's where we're at right now with the Chris Wars. Do you have any additions to this list? I know you have one. We talked about at the top of the hour.
Yeah, I mean, I think you got the list just right. I think I would like Christoph Waltz to get an honorable mention. I actually think ultimately he is a Christoph, and I think that actually puts him in a class all his own. But I do think he deserves an honorable mention. I think he's somebody who's also on a little bit of a cold streak right now, because his thing has gotten a little bit old. His thing was so shocking and so great in Inglourious Bastards, and then so weird and great in Django. But at this point, it's kind of just what's happening.
It definitely felt overdone in Spectre. I was not, like, the fact that they fucked that up somehow is really distressing.
Especially because he comes out of central casting for that role.
Right.
So that was a little bit alarming. But overall, Christoph Waltz is outstanding and deserves a little bit of a special mention. One person that I would argue I think deserves a place on this list is Chris Long. So from the athlete department, Chris Long, for those who don't know, is the son of NFL Hall of Famer, I believe Hall of Famer, Howie Long.
I think he's in the hall.
Yeah, he's got to be. So Howie Long's son, he has taken a pretty strong stance on social justice issues. So obviously the NFL has had all these, this back and forth between the players, the owners, the predominantly white fan base, the largely black players. Like there's just it's been a mess the way the NFL has handled its approach to social justice issues. And Chris Long has been a guy who has said a lot and has put his money where his mouth is. He donated, I believe, every one of his game checks last year to early education. I think was kind of his major initiative, was helping educate kids. And I love the way the guy has used his platform. He has defended Colin Kaepernick. He's defended a lot of people who have had a lot to say. And not everybody would agree with his take on that. But there's no question the guy has backed up what he had to say. So I think that's pretty cool. He's also an outstanding football player and pulled off a pretty remarkable double Super Bowl where he wins a Super Bowl with the Patriots, switches allegiance, goes to the Eagles, and wins another Super Bowl. The dude is on a heater right now. He also has some pretty dope-ass tattoos. Like, he's kind of got it all going for him. He's got the nice guy thing, like, helping people out. He's got the smart guy thing where he's got a lot to say and is really interesting. He's got the savvy businessman move, somehow backdooring his way onto 2 Super Bowls that he didn't really earn on the field. And he's got the bad boy tattoo look. I'm all in on Chris Long.
You've convinced me. I didn't know all this about Chris Long, but I want him on the list now. I think it's good to have a bit of a philanthropist on here because I'm sure a lot of these other people do charitable work, but not that I know of that you just discussed with him.
Yeah, I think it might make sense to, for reasons of outstanding suspicions, plop him right in where Christopher Walken is.
I think that's fair. I like that. And then do you want to reorder it all?
I would probably move Chris Sale down a little bit, Chris Paul, Chris Nolan up a little bit, and Chris Martin down a little bit. So I would go like Rock, Long, Martin, Sale, Paul, Nolan, and then where you went from there.
I don't know about putting Martin below Sale just because, like, if you say Chris Martin, I think people...
No, Martin is above Sale.
Oh, who do you have Martin
Let's work from the top. We want to work from the top. That's usually better. So Hemsworth, I think, is 1, no question.
Yeah.
I think your top 4 is right.
Okay.
Then I would go Nolan at 5. Then I would go Chris Paul. Then I would go Chris Martin.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Then that would put...
I don't know. Martin is, like, not at the peak of his career, but near it. And Paul is kind of, although he's famous and definitely, like, on the downward a little bit, definitely, like, close to the end of his career. I don't know. I'm sorry. I really feel strongly about Chris Martin.
Okay. Where would you like to see him then?
I think it's 6. I think we go Nolan, then Martin, then Paul, or I had Sale originally above Paul, but we could do Paul then Sale.
I think that's I would go that way.
Yeah, that's fair. And then Long and Rock.
Yeah.
Let's do that then.
I think that's the play.
I think that's the definitive how you would rank the Chris Wars right now.
That's how I would rank the Chris Wars, damn it.
So I'll recap and we'll get out of here. Number 10, the comedian Chris Rock, with his recent Netflix special and new look. Number 9, Chris Long, 2-time Super Bowl champion and philanthropist, and tattooed bad boy. Number 8, World Series champion and human trebuchet, Chris Sale. Number 7, State Farm advocate, Houston Rocket, Chris Paul.
I imagine that'll be the first thing in his...
Yeah. On his resume.
His article after he dies, yes.
Yeah. Paul was a State Farm advocate for... Yeah. Number 6, Chris Martin, the rock or pop god, somewhere in there. Number 5, Chris Nolan, the great filmmaker. Number 4, Captain America himself, Chris Evans. Number 3, Jurassic Fart star Chris Pratt, aka Andy Dwyer. Number 2, that sexy beast Chris Pine. And number 1, that somehow sexier beast Chris Hemsworth. Ooh!
Ooh, baby.
That's that, Mike. So, do you want to tell the folks where they can find us?
I think I would like to do that. So, they can find... I really gotta write this down.
Rooney!
I gotta write this down so I'm just reading this off and not trying to remember every time. So people should reach us on all the channels where we exist. So if you want to listen to the podcast, you should listen on Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, the Apple Podcast app, or wherever you get your podcasts. I think I got that part right.
Yeah.
If you want to email us,
Yep.
we are top10, so that's top and then 10 spelled out TEN, KM at gmail.com.
Yep.
Send us whatever the hell you got there. If you want to check us out on Twitter, it's the same thing. Our handle is top10KM, so it's at top TENKM. We are not yet on Instagram, but we are working on it
Yep.
and will be shortly.
Yep.
Where else are we?
I think those are the big ones. The thing is, like, we routinely check all these things. So, like, if you
Yeah.
send us something, you're gonna get mentioned on one of our mistakes pod. By the way, that's coming up hot here, and it's great. You know, like we always said on the pre-recording, like this is our top 10, but there's an asterisk for a reason, and we want to hear your thoughts on it. So please,
Yes, and we have heard from you on your albums, and
Yeah.
we will be getting that pod out to you shortly.
yep. So,
But keep sending them if you got them.
yeah, please do. We're still working on that one. The last thing, Kevin MacLeod composed our theme and not top 3 music, and as always, our artwork was put together by Erin Sant, and she does have an Instagram. She's at Sant Design. That's that, Mike. We're done for this week. I'll see you next time.
All right, adios.
All right.
Toot that thing up, mommy, make it roll. Once you pop, lock, drop it for me, girl, get low. If your mama gave it to you, baby girl, let it show.